Welcome in, everybody, to Scout's Eye on Football. I am Chris Landry, and it is the special edition, as we have been doing for, the past week, the past few days. We are breaking down, previewing the NFL draft. We're going to take a look at the Nfc East today, preview that division, and we're excited to have you with you. So appreciate you joining us. And hope that you can join us tomorrow as well, as we're going to break down the NFC North. And then on Monday and Tuesday, Monday, the NFC South, and Tuesday, the NFC West. We're taking a look at each team. What I'm doing is going through my notes of evaluation of what they have done and some notes on their needs and notes on what they have done in free agency, kind of where they are as a roster, holes that need to be filled. Everybody has them. Talk about maybe some potential looks at each of their picks. So we're here to take your questions as well. Any thoughts? See, Kev Belargo's joined in, cheering us on 200 bits. Let me explain what that is. Kevin is such a big supporter of what we do here. So if you are listening to this show in a podcast form, join us live. Joe, go to twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. Sign up, subscribe. It's free, and you'll be able to watch the show live and contribute in the chat room. You can cheer us on a few bits. It's real simple to do. Go ahead and go into the in the chat room like you're doing, and click on cheer, and remember to hit the heart button at the top of the page and follow us. It's real simple to do. So we appreciate your support. We appreciate your involvement there. We also want to remind you about LandryFootball.com. All the information that we got there. We always like to do that. Everything that is related to everything in pro football, college football. We're obviously heavily focused on the NFL draft. You can take a look at each team's analysis that we have in greater detail than we're able to even give here. 2, scouting reports on all the players that are going to be drafted, signees, undrafted free agents. Got that for you by position. And certainly the draft boards, the best players overall, and where the cutoff points are, what categories these players fit in terms of superstar, immediate ability, potential starters, chance to make and contribute, so on and so forth. We've got that all for you. And understand what that means. We explain it. How we evaluate each player. What are the critical factors for each position? Got all of that for you. So check that out. The horizontal board, the position board. So it's a great place to be. If you haven't been to LandryFootball.com, we think it's a great chance to join us. Sign up using the scouting season offer. That'll get you the best rate. It's less than $10 a month. It's even cheaper than that if you take advantage of the scouting season offer. Also, finally, again, repetitive for some, I know, and I'm always hoping that we've got some new folks that are joining. We appreciate the guys that are there. I see Fantasy Football 101 is joining us. Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well, sir. But a reminder, and a notice to anybody that is joining us, hearing us for the first time. Again, maybe listen to us live, you've heard this, but if you're listening to us in podcast form, this is a reminder to join us live, not just next week for the preview shows as we finish up the previews of the NFL draft, but also join us for the NFL draft coverage. Fantasy Football 101 suggested it, and we have come through, or at least we're going to try to come through. We are going to do a draft show during the draft. Basically kind of take you behind the scenes into what I'm doing. basically I will do what I have to do on draft day. Most of my work is done, but there's call it on call and having to maybe communicate with teams is what I have to do. I'm going to open the camera for you and the mic for you to let you see what it's all about, and I hope that it's something that you're going to enjoy. So what's going on with the picks, the discussions going on behind the pick, getting you prepared for the picks, analyzing the picks, whatever is going on, we'll be able to provide it for you as best we can. I'll be kind of running solo. So it'll be, I may have to step away a little bit here or there, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we appreciate it. Appreciate everybody joining us, and appreciate LSU Talk joining us. Fantasy Football 101, Capital Logo. If you're out there, give us a shout. Join us in the chat room. Join the buddies in the chat room. So as we get to the NFC East, if you've not had a chance, maybe you're joining us late and you want to find out about the AFC teams. We're doing this preview by position. You can go back and listen to those shows. The NFC East, clearly, not only just the worst division in football last year, it's the worst division in many a year. I mean, there were a lot of years when we've had some teams that are pretty bad, and we've had 500 records and sub 500 records winning. I mean, just teams are really bad. It's really bad. And when you have a 4-team division, look, it's always. I always said when we went to 4-team divisions, it's a little bit dangerous in that, and I say dangerous. You have a team that just has a disaster season. We've all seen have injuries and whatnot. Then you just have a team that's just not very good. That's a 2-team race. It's like you play all the years, and it's just basically with 2 teams. The NFC East has been competitive. It's been bad, and you know that you get into the playoffs, anything can happen, but probably not. Although we've seen 79 teams, seen Seattle beat the Saints, saw Carolina win as a 7-9 division winner, 7-9-1, or 7-9, 7-8-1, or 7-9, whatever they were. Doesn't matter. But it's a division that everybody has a long way to go. And I see Fantasy Football 101 mentioned he's a Cowboy fan. Says when you get to the Cowboys, talk about Zeke for a minute. He does not look the same once he got paid. We'll get into that. And the answer to that's just, yes, there's maybe part of that's on him, but if you look at it, they're not as balanced on offense. They're not playing as well up front. Dallas has been built on the offensive line, and we're going to start right there with the Cowboys because we'll go alphabetically within the division. Not Dallas and is up, and the Giants and Philly and then Washington. The issue with Zeke is the fact that this team is built around the run game and built around him. And when the offensive line is not playing as well and the defense is poor and you have to get away from the run game, you lose your rhythm, you lose your focus, you lose your identity with the run game, and you lose your pace. And, Zeke doesn't look the same. I agree. The issue is why. Well, this is what I think, as personnel people, as scouts, as coaches, we get paid to figure out why. I always say sometimes you get people that are the analytics guy, and the analytics and the pundits will talk about things that are, what happened. Well, everybody knows what happened. What's important is why did it happen? How? Because, it's kind of like, well, my car won't start. Well, yeah, you're right. It won't start. Why? Okay, what's the issue? I mean, it's, you have to figure that out, and you got to go through the checkpoints. Mechanics do anyway. God help me, I sure as hell can't figure that out. Same thing. So why? And people will, and this is probably the most comical part, is the theorizing of why things are not working with this. And then there are different reasons. Okay, well, Zeke doesn't look the same. Now he doesn't. Why? Now he's got the money, and he's not as competitive, not as motivated. Sometimes that's a factor. I don't know how much of that's this. I think he's had some health issues. I think if you look at him, the first contact, when they were playing well, he was able to get more blocked for him, and where he was a little bit easier to get into the second level. Now it's a little bit more difficult right now. The team is not playing as well, hasn't been playing as well up front. There's, certainly without Dak and even to some degree with him, but really without him, they feel no threat to be able to attack people. So you basically got more numbers in the box. And so, the way the Cowboys have been built, and when they have been successful, and when Dak has been successful, when Zach has been successful, they were a little bit more complete because they were focused on the run, because they could create numbers in the box and maybe throw and effectively attack you. Then they could loosen up the box, and then they would have a little bit better ability up front to be able to block you, get good numbers in the box, and be able to give Zach a little bit more running room. I think Zach has enough power and enough skill to some degree be his own blocker at times, but you're not going to be as effective when you have to do that all the time and time again. And then there's a rhythm factor. If you're not as good, if your defense is giving up a lot of points, it's hard to stay committed to the running game. And then you're throwing the football more and more, and not as much commitment to the run. Let's try to run it. It's not quite there. Your offensive line doesn't have that lather, doesn't have that juice going, and it's just, it's an identity, which is a flowery word of saying you have to get into rhythm of doing it. I don't know what type of work, but let's take whatever work you're in. It's like for me, when I'm working and looking at film and studying it, I can always say, and I always know this, I have to focus, and I have to spend time, and I have to try to avoid interruptions. Because when you have a lot of interruptions, it breaks the flow of what you're doing. And I think it affects somewhat of an ability to maintain what you're doing. And I don't know if you're in sales or whatever, there's a lot to that. In football, it is a lot about the rhythm that you can build. And then that allows you to be able to adjust and see things and things to flow a little bit better. And I think if you lose it, the Cowboys just have not been good at all. Last year, specifically, the loss of Dak Prescott hurt them a great deal. But the secondary was awful. So, again, the defense wasn't as good. And I think pass rush and secondary work hand in hand. We're going to get to the whole team. And, it certainly affects your ability to keep that pace and get that pace going. So part of it's, maybe on Zach, on Zeke. I keep saying Zach and Dak. And it's a part of it maybe is on Zeke. But I don't know that I would say, boy, he got the money and he's done. I don't buy that. And I don't think that's what you're suggesting, but it's a question that's valid. So let's get into it again. The secondary was among the worst in the NFL. It was in breaking down teams' coverage. It was third or fourth worst. Well, it was fourth worst in the league. They're tied for the most 25-yard plus touchdowns allowed. It was really bad. Trevon Diggs has a chance to be a player. He's got to progress, but I think he has a chance to be really good. I think they need to add somebody on the other side of him. I think that's really important. They've got the 10th, they've got the 44th, the 75th, the 100th, 116th, 137, 180, 193, 228, and 239 going into the draft. If you take a look at just a number of needs that we've talked about corner. Again, Diggs looks good as a rookie at time, but they're going to need help. Owuze graded out better than any of their corners last year, and he's gone. Certainly understand their situation and the money relative to what they're trying to do, but that's an issue too when you have maybe a player that you want to upgrade, but you want to upgrade before you let a guy go. Sometimes you have to do it if you don't have a good cap situation, and the Cowboys have not, that hurt them. So they're now actually, as we sit here today before the draft, they are weaker at corner than they were last year. And we'll get into why and maybe some of the issues and what they have done with some of the moves in free agency, and then go forward with some draft outlook. The middle of the defense up front did not grade out well at all. They've got to beef up the interior. Carlos Watkins, Brent Urban are rotational guys. They're not difference maker type guys. They did make an attempt and aggressively went out and signed two safeties, Keanu Neal and DeMonte KZ. Obviously, both Dan Quinn Falcon guys running the defense. So we'll get into that in a second. Into those two players, rather. Left tackle, Tyron Smith you can't, at this point, if he's not healthy, it's on you. I mean, meaning you just can't be surprised by that anymore. I don't think you can rely on it. I think you've got to look at that and address that at some point, the right spot. Other than DeMarcus Lawrence, who can really get after the quarterback and win consistently? Got an issue. Center position did not grade out well. Linebacker, Sean Lee's situation. So there's a lot of needs. No question. Free agent signings. Start with Brian Anger. Finished 12th in net punting last year. So it's, and if you remember him, I still remember him. He was drafted before Russell Wilson by the Jags. But he's, a solid player. Now, the two guys that signed at safety, Keanu Neal. We're talking about a first-round pick, Atlanta, very good player. But he's been slowed by injuries. So there's a hope with health that they can get a good year or two out of him. He's still a quality player. He's still young at 26, but he's got to rebound and have some good break health-wise. This a lot of times happens. Sometimes you have a guy that's aging and he's, 31, 32, and you see that probably not going to cycle back into what he was. This case, this guy's young enough to, but you don't know that he's going to play as well again because of the injuries. It's a question mark. Dominic KZ, love this kid. Logged 10 interceptions in the first 2 years heading into 2020, but played just 4 games last year after he tore his Achilles. Signed on a 1-year deal. So both of those guys are 1-year signings. Good signings. See if they can stay healthy, not making long-term commitments. They're 2 good signings. But it is not necessarily we're going to see. And it's good. Why? Because of what I said. 2 good players that have played well. Let's see if they can stay healthy. That's going to be the issue. They can't. It won't be productive. And you say, boy, Landry, you said it was a good signing. They're not playing well. If they're not healthy, they won't. But it's a 1-year deal, and it's worthy moves. Dak re-signed, of course. Awuzie, again, I think is a good player. And, for Dallas, it's not a great to lose him. Xavier Woods was a decent starting safety. I thought he covered pretty well for him. He didn't tackle very well. He's off to Minnesota. Andy Dalton is a backup quarterback, and, they obviously lost him. And, would be in a even dire situation currently if Dak were to go down. So let's take a look at corner. You've got Anthony Brown, who is a guy you'd really struggle as a backup corner, not as a nickel. He wouldn't even be. It's not a starting outside corner. It's not a starting slot. He is a backup corner that you'd like to replace. He's right now what's starting if you had to. If you had to play today, that's who'd be starting. Well, you don't have to play today, so it's kind of always goofy to say, but that's what we're dealing with. They're not good enough at the other corner, and they've got a young corner in Diggs that I think, again, can be a number one corner, is developing. So there's a lot of talk about at 10, best corner. Again, what do we know? What do we say about that? You don't say, corner, take the best corner, Chris. That's it. No, take the best player. But I do think you look at the board, and if you look at the horizontal board that I have, in my view, there's pretty good value there at corner. Now, there's value at other spots, and we're going to get to that. So if they choose to, I think they can get a really good player, good value player on the board at corner, which happens to be a need spot. Be it Surtain, who's or J.C. Horn or Caleb Farley. Farley's got maybe some injury risk. What do you think about him medically? That's a decision you got to decide. J.C. Horn has got a little bit more press man ability. Surtain is a little bit more versatile. Surtain can play outside. He can play in the slot. He's a really good technician. He's a really good tackler. He's very sound. He's very, I don't want to say comfortable, safe. He's just going to be an outstanding player. There's no real downside to it. We just talked about the safety position specifically. You can look at that. We just addressed the signing of two safeties. And again, playing more of the defense that they may play in the cover three. A long-term single high safety is something they've got to look at. Now, do they look at it at one? No, there's not. There's not a safety you take at the 10th pick. But it is something we need to look at. And, oh, by the way, so if they don't go corner at 10, what could they do corner-wise at 44? Well, Tyson Campbell's probably gone. Asante Samuel's probably gone. Maybe Eric Stokes. Melifano maybe is late even with their third pick. Kelvin Joseph's gone. Paulson Adebo. Benjamin St. Just and Cameron Bynum at 99. Those are some options. At free safety, value, if they wanted to come back and say they got their corner or at another position at 10. At 44, Richie Grant would be really good value there. Andre Cisco, Javon Holland. Cisco is an instinctive playmaking fool. Holland, Nasruddin, Stearns at 75. Those are some options. Adarius Washington, DeMar Hamlin. Now, at 10, defensive, at 10, depending on what they do, it creates some other options. What are some other needs? We just went through a bunch of them. Defensive tackle. We talked about the need there. There is not good value at 10 at defensive tackle. In fact, the best defensive tackles don't have first-round grades in my view. There'll be two of them go, and I'm curious to see how high does Barmore, as a rookie from Washington, go. and Davion Nixon goes. I mean, I think he could go late first, early second, because there's not much depth there. Be careful. You can go get yourself a good player. Your need is so great, you go get yourself a good player and leave a better player on the board at another spot. But that's a need for him. No question. I think there's hope for Nevin Gallimore. But Tristan Hill's not what they thought. And we'll see. But again, you don't force a pick there. You try to do something with a veteran, and you don't pass over a better player. But I don't think Ozoworski's going to be there at 44. Nixon, I don't think will be there at 44, but that would be for them good value. I'm not. I think somewhere in the third round, you could probably get somebody like Akeem Mcniel. I think maybe a third round option for them. I'm not crazy about. Marvin Wilson is the type of guy that they would draft. Be intoxicated by his size and speed. He just doesn't play well, and I don't think you can trust him. So, and then the other position I want to talk about with them is slot corner. So you get a secondary theme here, right? Jordan Lewis was a big hole for them. They gave him a good bit of money, just not comfortable there. So they've got a lot of needs, and I think there's needs to be heavy in the secondary in this draft. If you look at it, are they in love with any of the edge rushers? Don't ever rule out while there's not a defensive tackle worthy. If you're in love with one of the edge rushers, guy that can rush the passer, that might be something that you might see them do. It's kind of look there. This is the team that's got a lot of holes. Defensively, defensive tackle, add another pass rusher. Secondary is a mess. Still think they need a young linebacker. I mean, all those needs are fair game. So, and then offensively, a left tackle, a center, all those are needs. All those are weak spots. And so, yeah, it's a bigger need at defensive tackle, but you're not going to take a defensive tackle at 10, or you shouldn't, in my view, in this draft. So, again, take the best player because, quite frankly, your needs are so varied that it's probably going to fit. I think, let's see, we got Akeem Mcniel. Yeah, Akeem Mcniel, I think, is Michael Rockman. Yeah, I think he can be a 3 technique, but I don't think he's an elite guy. And I think that as a fit there in the third round for them would certainly, at 75, if he were there, I think it'd be really good value. I do not see value there for them at 44. What I mean is I think there's a better player. So big year for all the teams in the East because I think there's obviously it's competitive to where the team that could step up and get good quarterback play and fill some of these holes, hey, look out, bring them on. That's maybe your best team. You've got Philly with quarterback issues. You got Washington with quarterback issues. You got the Giants that don't quite know what they have at quarterback. You got Dak there. Regardless of what you think his worth was in terms of his contract, he is the only thing that's somewhat proven in that division. So they've certainly got a shot. But the Cowboys have never really managed their roster and never really, I thought, have always poorly allocated funds for certain players, just like I mentioned with Lewis. We need that. We get themselves in such a bad way where you overpay. Even with Dak, they could have gotten that deal done 2-3 years ago and didn't. poorly managed. The roster leaves a lot of holes, and I don't think they have really good depth. But it's a division that's manageable. So we'll see. We'll see who can get up off the mat first in the NFC East and likely going to win the division. Over to the New York Giants. Bradbury, corner, really is one of the better players that you probably don't hear enough about. He is a really good outside corner. And I thought it was really good. They signed him last offseason. I thought it was a really good signing. Yet they still not that good in coverage overall. He's done well. They are not good. They're edge defenders. They're third to last in pass rush. I mean, you see the theme. We're going to go through these 4 teams, and you're going to hear a lot of the same warts, and it's why they're bad. Daniel Jones is, can be serviceable, be decent. How good? Decision maker. Everybody talks about that, but I can't believe Mac Jones. Where did he come out of this, that, and what? Didn't we just go through this with Mac Jones? With smart guy, decision maker. There we go. We'll see how well it goes. They not as bad across the way with the Jets putting a team around Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's a more talented guy than Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones hadn't had a whole lot of help. We're going to get into that. He didn't develop very well. Again, it's hard to develop when you don't have talent around them. It's just like somebody asked yesterday about, Drew Lock. Well, the same thing. Yeah, to some degree, but there's a little bit more there, and you see some of the things that may or may not be lacking. So let's look at the needs in varying orders. I'm just going to start in the offensive line, and it's just been forever since they've tried to correct some of those issues. It's the center situation we're going to get into a little bit more. I don't like them at center right now. I don't like the way they're playing there. It needs to be upgraded. The guard play has not been good. They signed Zach Fulton. It's, the interior there, the offensive line, hurting the development of the quarterback. They got a couple of decent number 2 receivers. They signed Galladay and Ross. John Ross got to get more difference makers there. Tackle. The injury with Nate Solder. Can he hold up? A young guy there is needed. Offensive line we addressed. Got a really good young running back, but running back depth. Playmaker at receiver. We don't know about the quarterback. And I can't sit there and tell you he's going to be good enough. I can tell you this. They're not good enough around him to really know. A lot of needs on the offense. In the secondary, we talked about. Now, Dory Jackson can help. The corner spot. So I'm hopeful for them that Bradbury can play and build off of what he did. Dory Jackson, I thought, should have been kept in Tennessee. That gives them some hope there. Edge rusher, we just talked about. They've got some solid guys, but they don't have guys that can win consistently. They got to scheme them open a little bit or scheme opportunities for them to get rush. Ryan Anderson and Odobito are serviceable guys, but not difference makers. Defensive tackle. Leonard Williams and Danny Shelton Leonard Williams comes back. Dalvin Thompson moves on. Really good run defender. Danny Shelton is not a wash, but a similar type player. But I thought the defensive line graded fairly well for the Giants. But there's evidence that shows you they're not going to be as good. The production won't be as good next year if they don't upgrade, I think, with a tackle and at least one edge rusher. Linebacker, I think Blake Martinez has been outstanding. He's one of the best linebackers, off-the-ball linebackers in some time, but they don't have a whole lot else. So, I mean, we just, you go through these teams. What do you need? I mean, defensive end, defensive tackle, depth at linebacker. We just went through the secondary. I mean, my goodness. Depth at running back. Devontae Booker is maybe, can provide that for you. But it's like you don't need to worry about drafting for need. Man, you just draft best player. It's going to be at a position of need for these teams. Pretty easy. Now, I do think there's some hope at receiver with what they've done. There's hope at corner with what they've done. Kenny Golladay is one of the more underrated receivers. Is he a 1? No. Are you going to get a 1? Probably not. Maybe one of those elite receivers, would they take him? Yeah. Don't know. I got a question about Dave Gettleman. I've known Dave for years. It's a big guy complex, so he may take that. But that's something that at least they can be better at receiver, even though they may lack the true number 1 guy. Adoree Jackson, as I mentioned, has a chance to really help them out. 3 years, $39 million. Limited to 14 games the past 2 years. That's the problem. That's why they let him go in Tennessee. But he's 26. Again, health theme here. Shelton is big-time run stuffer. Came off his worst year because of knee injuries. If it can bounce back, you got something there. The RFA, Otabigo is lots of potential. We'll see how that plays out. Leonard Williams, there's a lot of talk about him. He's gotten a lot of flack. This guy played well, graded out well last year for the Giants. To kind of address the guard position again, part of it was Kevin Zeitler. Coming off a down year last year, he still played well in a down year for him. They saved $12 million. He's 31, so they're just moving on. I get it, but it doesn't make them better for this year. So you're looking at a number of things. Let's kind of just try to address a couple of them. Where do they go at 10? I know there's a lot of talk, this and that. What if they'll do? But edge rusher. You start looking at the board. Pure pass rusher off the edge. Kyler Fackrell's not there. And you look at guys like Lorenzo Carter with an Achilles. Minis with a shoulder. Carter Coughlin. I mean, it's just question marks there. Would they go with an edge rusher this high? Do they like any one of those guys? Do they would they like an Ojulari? Maybe a little high, maybe a better player on the board, but for them, they might consider it. They may have those guys rated a little bit higher. Not out of the question. A little bit high at 11 for the Phillips, any of the defensive ends, but maybe not. It's about where you would start these guys on the big board. That's about where I've got them start going. So I think we can think about edge rusher for them. But I don't know. I don't know they'll be the best players still on the board. Might be a linebacker, might be a corner, might be a receiver still there. I think value with need is going to be an edge rusher, not a defensive tackle, but an edge rusher. Vera Tucker might be someone that they may be intrigued by. I don't think I'd go center. That would not go center that high. But I think offensive tackle, I think defensive end is where value is going to be on the board at some of their need spots. So what could it be? Could it be a Ojulari? Could it be how do they grade Kwity Paye? How do they have Phillips and Rousseau, Tryon? I tell you, the guy that you got to look out for, folks, that, and I got him, 21, he's probably going to go higher. And again, 5 through 24 on the board are fungible. The more and more I think about it, Zaven Collins of Tulsa will go higher than people think. Don't be surprised if he's a factor, because he's a guy that's got real edge rush ability. He's up to 268, 270. So that's going to be interesting to see. We're getting into the area where you get out of this top 6, 8, 10, and that all everybody's talking about. There'll be a good offensive tackle. They'll be good. There'll be a good edge rusher. There'll be a good offensive lineman. They'll get a good player. I'm convinced of it. Just trying to figure out where they would go. Would Rashawn Slater, Vera Tucker would be strong considerations. The edge rushers, I think second round. Creed Humphrey's probably gone. Miners at some point. I can tell you at 42, maybe Asasi's still there. Joe Tryon, Carlos Basham, Ronnie Perkins, Patrick Jones, Rashad Weaver. Those are some interesting guys. So they've got a chance, I think, but I think it's going to be another big guy draft, and not just because that's kind of what the theme has always been with Dave. Jigs that says, Chris, I know, Gettleman pretty well. I don't think he's ever traded down in the first round. To me, this could be a great year to trade down. Do you think he would if the offer was right? Yes, absolutely would. The whole then trade down, it doesn't mean that you won't trade down. It just means that you hadn't. And there are always reasons for it. I think it depends, though. If you're at 11, you're not trading down if you've got an elite player at what might be an odd position. Like I'm going to tell you, it wouldn't really fit but what I just said about edge rusher and offensive tackle, so on. What if one of those elite receivers are still there? They now have a chance to get a number one receiver. Now, it's not the biggest need because they've addressed it with Galladay and they've got some guys, but that's probably going to be the best player on their board. I'm guessing, or at least I'm assuming based upon what's on my board. That's a consideration in my view. Corner, there's going to be great value at corner. I think receiver or corner is very likely going to be on the top of their board when they pick. Not meaning the best players available will be one of those guys, at least one of those guys at that position. I'm guessing. But as I have them stacked among the 6-5 grades, if you see that on Landry Football. But I think that while the edge rushers and maybe some of the tackles are just a few rungs down stack-wise, it's not a reach to take any one of those guys. So I think it's interesting. Looking again, a reminder, they've got 11, 42, 76, 117, 197, and 202. They got all their picks in next year's draft. So we'll see. Trading down, yes. So if those guys, to answer your question, if those guys are gone and you don't think there's great value, yeah, would you move down? Yes. But that's a generic, yeah, of course. But the real answer is, yeah, where am I moving down to? What am I going to get, to move down, and how far? And, it absolutely is doable. Would I say it's likely? No, because I think there'll be a really good player there. And I think if you look who would want to move up, I could see maybe somebody moving up, maybe 2 or 3 spots. I would say from 11 to 12, 11 to 14, and 11 to 15. I could see somebody wanting to move up. Would I move down? Yeah, I could get one of those secondary players. I can get an edge rusher and get an offensive tackle moving down 1 to 3 spots. Yes. So, yes, I would do that. But I might take myself out of that elite player. So the answer, that elite player, that elite receiver, that elite corner. So what if we just talked about Surtain? What if Surtain's still on the board? You're going to pass him up. You're going to pass. You're not getting him moving down 3-4 spots. But do you like Farley just as much? Do you like Horn just as much? You might not get any specific one of those edge rushers that I mentioned, or any one of those 1 or 2 specific tackles that I mentioned, but you're going to get one of them if you move down. So it really depends on how high you have the top guy there. Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, it's always a possibility. Jigsaw says, listening to Chris reminds me how depressing my team is. Giants are so bad. Yeah, well, I'm probably doing a bad job. But the East is bad, but there is hope. Nola Jack, welcome, Nola Jack. Do you consider Drew Brees let me see what he says here. Do you consider Brees a WB that Sean Payton developed? If not, who has Sean developed at quarterback? I'm not quite sure. WB, I guess I'm drawing a blank here. What do you mean? Drew Brees, the success of Drew Brees. There's a lot of credit should go to Drew and to Sean. Do I think Drew would have been good anywhere? Do I think he'd have been really good in Miami with Nick Saban and the Dolphins? Absolutely. The fact that he was with Sean Payton helped him out a lot. Look, I think that Sean, you say, well, who has he developed? Well, when you look at it, Sean, I will say this, it's a short sample size, but when they didn't have Drew Brees the last couple of years, when he's been out injured for the stretch, they've done very well without it. Now, it's a big difference between doing it for 16 games and see what you can do then. Sean Payton without Drew Brees is not going to be as good. Drew Brees without Sean Payton, that probably maximize how good Drew Brees could be. And Drew Brees was Hall of Fame level. I think Sean deserves credit for that. And I think Drew deserves, probably the majority of the credit because he's really, really good. We'll see what Sean can do. And I think he's eager to show that, by the way. And we'll get into that more in the NFC South preview, which will be on Monday. I think he's eager to prove what he can do with Jameis Winston, what have you, and a younger quarterback. But Drew Brees was special. It is unlikely that the next guy is going to be anywhere near what Drew Brees was for a number of reasons for Sean. But it's really, really was a good match. Look, Sean has done a good job. I think Sean, when he was brief time in Philly and in New York, did a good job. But he did a good job. He was the guy that got the Cowboys on Tony Romo. And I know it was actually his school, but he did like him. And you know what? He did some good things with him. Now you may say, Tony Romo's over it. He got a lot out of him. And I do think that if you're looking at some of the best quarterback teachers and play callers and play designers, I think Sean Payton is in that elite category. It does not mean that you plug anybody else in and it's going to be as good. It won't. It doesn't work that way. It's not who's better? You better have both. You're driving your vehicle, you better have a transmission and tires, because if you're lacking one of them, you're not going very far. The Philadelphia Eagles, boy, that team, I think, boy, it's an example. You win the Super Bowl, and look out. We got a Super Bowl team. It has just been a steady decline ever since. It's been roster mismanagement, a GM that doesn't have real strong football acumen, but thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. I don't know what they're doing at quarterback, and I don't know what they're going to do. Jalen Hurts is an intriguing guy in the second round. I think Carson Wentz's problems were more how things were handled, but I think jury's still out on Carson. He's got to prove his mental toughness, and we'll see what he can do under Frank Wright. Now, that's another good quarterback teacher, Frank Wright, over at Indianapolis. Jalen Hurts is a guy that can make some off-platform throws, some off-structure throws, but boy, he's not a consistent guy in the pocket. I don't know. I don't rule out Philly being in the quarterback business, and they'll get hammered for it. And this is a team, this is an organization that I worry about right now more than any in the NFC East. I see some positives in Dallas. I see some positives in the aforementioned Giants. I know I was talking about all the negatives. I mean, they're there. You got to do it. But hey, roll your sleeves up, get it done. I just don't know. The Eagles have done a poor job developing. They've been a poor job of evaluating, and it's a mess. Guys that just didn't work out. If they ride only with Hurts, they're going to struggle. The receivers are young and unproven. The receivers were dead last in terms of receiver grades in the league. They were the dead last. And got Greg Ward and Travis Fulgham and Jalen Reagor and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And Jalen Reagor was better than Justin Jefferson, and part of that is misevaluation. Part of that is lack of development and lack of leadership in the organization. I mean, I think they need 2 linebackers on defense. I think they need 2 corners on defense. I think they need a defensive tackle. I think they need a safety. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, the defense was miserable last year in Philly. The linebacker is a big part why. They only signed Eric Wilson. Dreadful linebacking court. Dreadful. Really bad. Really looked bad. 2 corners, big area of weakness. Been a liability for them for quite some time. Defensive tackle, use another player to help improve that pass rush. Safety isn't big of a need as the other spots in the back 7, but it still needs to be addressed. I mean, Anthony Harris, Andrew Adams, those are short-termers. We talked about receiver. Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. I mean, do they draft? They'll be in a position to get somebody. Chase will be gone. Devontae Smith or Waddle, one of them may be there. What do they do there? What do they do at quarterback? They signed Joe Flacco. What's the future there at quarterback? I mean, we know what the future at quarterback is in Dallas. I know there are question marks in New York, but not nearly as much as – I feel more comfortable about doing something. But in Philly, I'm really concerned. Washington's got issues there too. Tight end situation, need another guy there. I mean, it's really a dire situation. Anthony Harris was signed. He had a great year in 2019. When he entered free agency, the Vikings gave him a Ewing's contract, and he regressed. He wasn't the dominant player. We'll see what he can do. Eric Wilson, also signed from the Vikings, linebacker. I thought he did a pretty good job, graded out pretty well as the 3rd linebacker for Minnesota, but he missed too many tackles. He can cover fairly well. Boston Scott, the RFA, is the backup behind, can be a solid backup behind Miles Sanders. I'm looking at the offensive line, and that was a strength of the unit. Dillard, Seumalo, Kelsey, Brooks, Lane Johnson, not bad. It's comparatively speaking, not as bad as some other spots. So where do they go? Let's look at their picks again, just to run them through. They had 12, 37, 70, 85, 124, 151, 190, 225, 226, 235, and 241. They hold all their picks next year. They have an additional first-round pick from Miami and an additional conditional second-round pick next year that can become a first-round pick as part of the Carson Wentz trade. So here's the thing. It's a bad team, and they got a lot of ammunition to fix it. I don't trust the guy that's being put to fix it because they don't have a football guy as a GM. They got a young guy as a head coach, and I really worry about their situation. Let's look at outside corner. at 12. I think there'll be a really good one there. Surtain may be gone, but I think Horn or Fairley will be there. Makes some sense there. Darius Slay has one more season of guaranteed money. I think they're going to be looking for cover two guys. I think they'd prefer Surtain, but he may be gone. I think they're going to probably play less cover one and more cover two in their scheme. Stokes and Campbell and Samuel, Melifanu, Joseph, some down the road guys for them. Receiver, we just talked about it. Rager, I think, can be a number 2. I think can be a really good number 3. Could be a really good number 2. What can they get there? They'll be out of the Jamar Chase business. He'll be gone. But Smith, Waddle, with a 37, what's there? Bateman may be gone. Tony Marshall probably gone. Tutu Atwell, De'Ami Brown, Tywin Wallace. Slot corner, it's a big need now, man. I mean, it is a big need. It's a starter position. I don't like them. I don't like their slot corner situation. Lining up in nickel's a problem. Lining up period's a problem. That secondary, as I mentioned, so bad. And then linebacker. Morg's going to, too high at 12, I think. Samuel Robinson, Elijah Molden. Those are some options. In linebacker, they got Alex Singletons, TJ Edwards, Devion Taylor, Sean Bradley, Rashad Smith, Joe Bashie is an off-ball linebacker. Not out of the question to go Michael Parkins if he's there. There's some value with him. Some people may think high for Xavier Collins. Again, I think he's going to go a little high. Then people think Jamin Davis, Nick Bolton, Jabril Cox, Jazz Surratt, some later options. A lot of needs, a lot of picks. Can they get them right? Secondary, corner in particular, linebacker, receiver. Who's the best player on the board at 12? Gonna get iffy. We're talking to these teams in this 10, 12, 13 range. Somebody's slipping. Would Philly be in the quarterback business? Would they go up and get Justin Fields? Would they take Justin Fields if they were there at 12? Or Trey Lance? Would they do that and now have 2 quarterbacks to develop? I'm throwing it out. I'm not saying I think it. It's a rhetorical question. They're in a bit of a mess. And not that they don't have draft capital. They're probably in the best position to fix it. But I don't think of a division of screw-ups with a Washington owner, that's bad. A Cowboy situation that doesn't have a football guy running things. Giants have been criticized. The Eagles have done as bad of a job as anybody of kind of messing up a really good team because they had something going pretty good and they screwed it up. Washington, we'll finish up with them. They entered free agency with a dire need of receivers. They've got one of the best in Terry McLaurin. And they were dead last grading overall at receiver because he's got no help. Receiver, tight end. They picked up Curtis Samuel, obviously, ironically, a teammate of McLaurin's at Ohio State. Boy, you really had a good year under Joe Brady's offense in Carolina. It gives them a weapon. Ryan Fitzpatrick comes in, and he's a short-term answer. Got to find a long-term answer. Remember, this is where the owner told his people want to move up to get Dwayne Haskins. And we'll see what Dwayne can do, whether he can do anything in Pittsburgh, but that's an issue there. So quarterback, long-term future, we'll see. They may be in the quarterback business. Is Trey Lance somebody they would take? Justin Fields, who knows? Left tackle, Alex Smith, Heineke. Alex Smith struggled. He's retired. Heineke, Fitzpatrick is the guy. Need better protection. They're not good enough at left tackle. Was a huge hole on the offensive line. Linebacker, another bad linebacking core. It was already troubled, and you've got some older guys like Pierre Lewis and Thomas Davis that are moving on. They franchised Brandon Sheriff, but they need a young offensive guard. They need not only to address receiver, but Samuel has to hit for them, and they're going to need Cam Sims to step up along with McLaurin, and then things can start to get a little bit better. Ronald Darby played well at corner. He's going to Denver. Signed William Jackson, Darryl Roberts. Let's take a look at what they did do. William Jackson was signed at corner over from the Bengals. It's been a good corner for them. So it's a neat spot. He can help. He's just got one full season. Can he stay healthy? Curtis Samuel, we just talked about his playmaking ability. Explosive playmaker with the ball in his hands. You're going to need that with a guy that can work underneath with Fitch would make a lot of sense. It will make a lot of sense and will help them. It makes a lot of sense in what they did. Brandon Sheriff, when healthy, has been grading out one of the top guards in the league. He can also play tackle on the pinch. Not quite 30. Look, they could play another 4 or 5 years. Needs some break to be, to need some breaks health-wise. He's missed 3, 5, and 8 games over the past 5 years. So they lost Darby to the Broncos. So the quarterback situation is a 1-year rental. So you got to figure that out. I think that's in play for the Skins at 19. I do. I mean, even moving up. Left tackle's in play. There's value there. The entire offensive line returns, but they can upgrade. And then remember that Cornelius Lucas is going to be a free agent after 2021. So I think there's really good options there. Vera Tucker makes some sense. Darashaw, Cosme, I think Slater's going to be gone. Second round, Leatherwood, Radness, Carmen makes some sense. Hudson, Little, Brady Christensen. Linebacker would make some sense with Micah Parsons if he were there. I think it's a little high for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Zaven Collins would factor in there. In my mind, 19 would make a whole lot of sense. Jalman Davis, Nick Bolton, Jabril Cox later on. Receiver, don't like anybody at 19 outside of the elite guys. I guess you can start thinking Terrence Marshall. You can start thinking Kadarius Toney. But I do think you got Curtis Samuel, the same type of guy. Elijah Moore. I don't know that I see a receiver at 19 unless it's Marshall or unless one of those top guys slips all the way to 19. Then makes a lot of sense. Free safety. I think Cameron Carroll can play free. Didn't take a lot of snaps there. Del Rio wants to play cover 1 and cover 3. He needs to find a true free safety. So Richie Grant, Andre Sisco, the names we've mentioned, Darius Washington, DeMar Hamlin, Richard LeCompte, those are the type of guys later that would make some sense. So another team in the division with a whole lot of needs. I mean, what did you expect? Everybody has needs. And when I go through it, it's not just – it's upgrading each position, even though sometimes the position is pretty good, but it's thinking a year ahead. But everybody's got needs. But I don't know I do know there's not a division where all 4 teams have as many dire needs as the NFC East. That's why their record's so bad. The rosters are so bad. And they got a long way to go. The positive is, the Eagles kind of let everybody back in. The Eagles had it gone. The Eagles screwed it up, and they were riding high, and they just fallen back. And they're, as I said, don't know whether they can rebound and get off the mat. But basically, it's all is fair game in that division. Everything's kind of wide open. So that's a look at the NFC East. Tomorrow, we will look at the NFC North. Monday, NFC South. And Tuesday, NFC West. So we'll continue with the series. A couple of things before we get out of here. Do you think Jalen Hurts, football fans you want to know, do you think Jalen Hurts can keep the job? What are his strengths and weaknesses? Yeah, we just kind of went over that. I'll mention it again. I don't think he's a starting caliber quarterback. He's a runner. He's a competitor. He's a leader. That's his strength. I think he can make some off-structure throws, but I don't think he's a guy that can make consistent throws from within the pocket. I think I don't know what they were thinking. At least to make sense of their pick last year would be to say, if you're going to use Jalen Hurts as the slash guy, the situational quarterback, as a guy that can get you through a game and maybe get you through a few games if Carson Wentz goes down, and truly develop him as a backup and a slash player, as much as I think you're leaving better players on the board last year in the second round, that at least makes some sense. Now that you moved on from Carson Wentz, no, I don't see he's a number one quarterback. I don't see that. So I don't know what you're doing. I mean, some of those things that just, you try to make sense of it. I just don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But listen, I'm hopeful. My goal is to help everyone. And there's always going to be teams that are bad because that's the result of teams being good. I want everybody to do well, and I'd like to see everybody be pretty good and everybody be in a position to where they can make a few moves and turn things around. But in this division, there's a whole lot of work. It's not a whole lot of work to win the division. I don't mean that, but there's a whole lot of work to do anything, because winning the division is your Super Bowl, because you might be able to pull up a massive upset in one round of the playoffs. You're not doing that consistently beyond that. So take a look at it. A reminder again, check out LandryFootball.com. Really appreciate all of you. I'm glad that the feedback is good, and I appreciate Kevin Largo, Fantasy Football, all of you, Nola, Jack, Jigstad, Michael, LSU Talk, all of you guys that are joining, and we certainly hope to grow that group and add more fan bases to the mix and whatnot. Really appreciate. Check out LandryFootball.com if you have not done it. We'll be here, do the NFC North. Tell everybody if you can, help me out on the social media, whatever, about the draft show, so that we get a whole bunch of people there. It's free, and just sign up. You guys do it, so you know how to do it. Most of you are joining from the Twitch side, so join us there. We really appreciate you being with us. Have a great evening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, everyone. We'll join you for SEC football and beyond in the morning with Neil McCready. Be some draft talk there with him, I'm sure, as well. And then tomorrow afternoon, 4 p.m. Central Time, NFC North, up on track. We'll continue on as we get you ready for the NFL draft. Just 1 week away. Have a great one, everyone.